I cared for her for 5 years, but my mother's sobs could be heard from the audience as tears welled up in my husband's eyes. He's done nothing for all this time, yet he plays the good son so well. I'm the only one who knows the truth. You better realize this, John. I started, playing the audio evidence that would reveal my husband's true nature. My name is Sarah. I've been married to John for 7 years now. Currently, we live as a family of 3 with my bedridden mother-in-law. 5 years ago, her illness forced her into a bedridden lifestyle. My father-in-law had passed away before I got married, so there was no one else to care for her. At the time, John's work wasn't going well, and we were struggling to make ends meet. So he asked if we could live together with his mother, and she agreed. Feeling guilty about relying on her, I decided to take care of her while also working a part-time job. My mother-in-law seemed to feel guilty about being cared for. I continued, recounting how she often tried to reassure me. Sarah, that's enough. Please don't worry about me. I always encouraged her with a strong will, I recalled. When she said this with a troubled smile, I replied, what are you talking about? I'm indebted to you, mother-in-law. But it must be hard with both work and housework, plus taking care of me. I don't want to burden you anymore, Sarah, she insisted. It's not a burden at all. I want to be with you. That's why I'm doing this on my own accord. I reassured her. But you should have your own happiness. Being able to talk to you every day like this is my happiness, so don't worry about it. Tears welled up in mother-in-law's eyes as she whispered a small thank you. There's not much that I can do, yet she always expresses her gratitude like this. Ever since we got married, my mother-in-law has been very kind to me, so taking care of her is not a burden at all. In fact, it feels like my mission. While I do enjoy caring for her, there's one thing I'm not satisfied with in my current life. My husband, John. He's what you'd call a traditional type who thinks housework is a woman's job. He wasn't that bad when we got married, but since we started living with his parents, he's become increasingly selfish. He doesn't contribute much to the household expenses, but his entitlement is as high as Everest. For instance, when he comes home, he starts yelling if I don't greet him at the door. Hey Sarah, I'm home. Why aren't you greeting me? Hurry up, get my stuff. I frowned at my husband and voiced my complaints. Listen, John, I've told you before, I'm not your servant. You should do what you can on your own. Huh? What are you saying? Who do you think is making the money for this family? Yes, it's true that you're providing for us, but I'm also doing my part. I'm working part-time. Despite that, you speak to me like this. Shut up. Your earnings are just peanuts. You can't survive without me, so don't you dare defy me. And you? You can't even contribute properly to the living expenses. The only reason we can live in this house is undoubtedly thanks to your mother. At first, I would fight back, but my husband started threatening divorce every time we quarreled. Watch yourself, Sarah. Keep this up and we'll get a divorce, got it? Please, not so loud. Your mother is in the other room. Shut it. It's all because you're so insolent. Understand this. You'd be the one in trouble if we divorced. Do you get that? Just lower your voice and don't always talk about divorce like that. Yeah, right. You would have nowhere to go if we got divorced. Besides, there's no company out there willing to hire a scrub like you full-time, Sarah. Stop talking like that. Just shut up and listen to what I'm saying. You idiot. You're so slow. Honestly, I was more than ready to divorce my husband, but when I thought of my mother-in-law, I couldn't bring myself to go through with it. You can always talk to me if you're troubled, Sarah. You're my precious daughter, my mother-in-law would reassure me. She was always very kind to me, as if we were truly mother and daughter. Because of her, I wanted to take care of her properly until the end. I wanted to repay her for all the kindness she had shown me. That's why I endured the painful days with my husband in this house. I couldn't entrust my mother-in-law's care to a man like him. Then one day, as I was preparing dinner, I heard the usual shouting from the entrance. Hey Sarah, I'm home. Come out and greet me. I'm using the stove right now and can't leave it. What, are you kidding me? What kind of wife doesn't prioritize her husband? My husband, who had lost his patience, stormed into the living room. Hey, what are you thinking? I always tell you to greet me when I come home. Why don't you understand? As you can see, I was just frying something. I don't care. You should have timed it to be finished when I come home. You're useless. Well, you never tell me when you'll be home. I told you not to talk back. A useless and insolent wife is nothing but garbage. My mother-in-law, who had come out upon hearing the harsh words, spoke in a stern voice. John, that is no way to talk, is it? Oh, Mom, you're still alive. Sarah is working hard every day for this household for both of you and me. That's what a wife is supposed to do, right? She earns a little, is half-baked in housekeeping. She's basically social trash. Enough is enough. My usually quiet mother-in-law raised her voice on the spot. You wouldn't say what you want about me. Don't you dare slander Sarah. What, Mom? Are you on Sarah's side too? You two are colluding, huh? My mother-in-law, who usually remains silent, continued to speak. This time, John, one request. Ha! What is it? Just put me in a nursing home. I don't want to be a burden on Sarah anymore. Ha! A nursing home. Where do you think we have that kind of money? We still have your father's inheritance and my pension. I don't need a fancy place. At my mother-in-law's unexpected remark, I was at a loss for words. Mother-in-law, have you been considering this? Thinking about me? Tears welled up in my eyes at the thought of her kindness. However, it was completely lost on my husband. At the suggestion, he made a deeply disgusted face. Don't joke around. There's no way we're putting you in a nursing home. That's a waste of money. Please don't say that. Life would be easier in this house if I wasn't here. If we put you in a facility, the neighbors and my colleagues will start gossiping that I'm an ungrateful son, won't they? You don't need to worry about what people think. I still want to be a burden to you. Then shut up and do as you're told, old woman. I'm taking care of you, isn't that enough? John, you don't do anything. Huh? I let you live in this house and I make Sarah work too. Isn't that enough for you, ungrateful woman? Unable to bear my husband's words, I raised my voice. Are you talking about who's the ungrateful one here? This house originally belonged to your mother, didn't it? Are you talking back to me again? But that's true, isn't it? 5 years ago, when you were fired, we were in trouble, and didn't your mother-in-law gladly take us in? How can you say that? Shut up, both of you. And I'm not doing this reluctantly. I'm taking care of mother-in-law out of my own will. Stop making unilateral decisions. Despite my desperate plea, my husband just said, "That's true. Troublesome," and left the room. In the awkward silence, my mother-in-law kept apologizing and crying. It's not your fault, mother-in-law. The one at fault is John. Every day, I was frustrated by a reality that I could not control. A few days later, while I was cleaning the house, a man who claimed to be an acquaintance of my mother-in-law's came to visit. Mother-in-law looked surprised, but she wore a full smile. Oh, is that you, Jackson? You came to visit. Well, if I was asked to visit my senior Linda, I couldn't refuse, could I? I remember treating you a lot at work when we were younger, right? Yes, I'm grateful. So what's your will? Why did you call me today? Yes, actually. Looking at me, mother-in-law said, "Sorry, could you step out for a bit?" Assuming they had a lot to catch up on, I happily agreed, saying, "Sure," and went out to buy some sweets. This man Jackson apparently was a junior when mother-in-law was working. It had been a while since I saw mother-in-law looking so happy. When I thought it was time to come back, Jackson was just about to leave. "Oh, excuse me, I'm about to make tea." "No, that's fine. We finished our conversation. But thank you for always taking care of Linda. She's a benefactor to me, so it's reassuring to know that she has a daughter like you." He bowed his head to me and left. Since then, Jackson has been regularly visiting mother-in-law, and they always have a lively conversation. It was a few months later that my mother-in-law's condition worsened, and she had to be rushed to the hospital. When I urgently called my husband, he responded with disbelief. "My mom's in danger." As if I care. "You're there, you can handle it." But the doctor said her condition's unpredictable. "Please, I need you." No way. Plus, I'm leaving for a business trip today. What now? Of all times, please try to cancel it. Are you stupid? There's no way I can do that. Handle it on your own and don't call me until I reach out first. With that, he hung up abruptly. Not knowing what to do, I slumped down in front of my mother-in-law's hospital room. He's going on a business trip while his mother is in this state? This is just too cruel. How am I supposed to tell my mother-in-law? Just as I was sinking into despair, Jackson appeared. "Oh, Sarah, what's wrong?" Jackson. Something happened, right? Let's go to your mother-in-law's room for now." Okay. When we entered the room, my mother-in-law looked at us and struggled to speak. "Jackson, you're here. So, does that mean you did what I asked?" "Yeah, but are you sure about this?" "Of course. I have to clear things up before I go, don't I?" I understand. Then my mother-in-law weakly took my hand. Sarah, there's something I want you to know. What is it? My son has been withdrawing money from my account for his pension and spending it on his mistress. An affair? He's a man who treated me like a maid. I had some idea from the start, but to think he was even taking money from his mother's pension. I asked Jackson to investigate the matter. I see, so that's why my mother-in-law called Jackson to the house. Jackson, please record what I'm about to say. It will be my last will. Understood, Linda. Jackson slowly took out a voice recorder. Once he finished recording everything, he placed it in my hand. How you use this recording is up to you, Sarah. Up to me? Yes, I'm the only one who can avenge my mother-in-law. I squeezed her frail hand back with strength. The next day, my mother-in-law passed away, leaving her final revenge in my hands. On the day of the funeral, 2 days later, my mother-in-law, who had always been popular, drew a large crowd. Seeing this, my husband made an inappropriate comment. Wow, I didn't expect so many people to come. It's a great opportunity to show off my skills as chief mourner. What are you talking about? You weren't even there when she died. Ignoring my reproach, he continued casually, I'll make everyone cry with my touching eulogy. My bosses from work are here too. If they're moved by how filial I am, it could boost my reputation and lead to a promotion. Just kidding. How can you act like this when your mother just passed away? Just think about it. Now that mom's gone, I'll get dad's inheritance, right? Man, I'm so lucky. Ignoring my trembling rage, my husband cheerfully went on to give the eulogy. After the formalities, he began talking about taking care of his mother. Then, with tears in his eyes, he said, I have devoted myself to caring for my mother for 5 years, but in vain. She has passed away. But I have no regrets. I am proud that I could support my mother until the end. At my husband's eulogy, sobs could be heard from the audience. Perhaps pleased with the reaction, my husband continued to speak indefinitely with a touch of drama as if he had always been a dutiful son. The attendees, oblivious, listened to this story with tears in their eyes. Thank you all for today, he concluded. With his closing words, I stood up. As the room began to stir, I stood before my husband and took out a voice recorder. What are you doing? Ignoring my husband's restraint, I raised my voice to the attendees. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, please listen to this recording. As I pressed the play button, my mother-in-law's voice flowed from the voice recorder. Her voice at that time, recorded in the hospital. Thank you all for attending today. There's something I absolutely want you to hear, so I've left this voice message. My husband and even the attendees were stunned by the unexpected turn of events. I believe you've just heard my son's speech. Probably he was talking as if he had been a dutiful son. The recording continued in my mother-in-law's voice that knew my boastful husband well. She had a good grasp of his likely behavior as a parent. I increased the volume of the voice recorder so that everyone could hear. However, my son did not care for me. He just kept shouting at me and my daughter-in-law, Sarah. Of course, we have audio evidence of him verbally abusing Sarah and me. As my husband's face turned red, he shouted, What is this? Stop this. Ignoring him, I continued to play the recording. Besides, hi son, I was withdrawing my pension from my account without my permission. I'm giving it to another woman, not Sarah. One day, I noticed something odd about my son and had an old friend look into it. And this fact came to light. The attendees were all filled with anger, while my husband turned pale. Finally, my mother-in-law delivered a final blow to my husband from heaven. I have a request for everyone. Please do not give my inheritance to my son. You could donate it, destroy it, whatever. Anyway, I will not forgive my son. I need your help. With those words, the voice ceased. My husband was in a panic, shouting something, but no one was there to help him. On the contrary, all of the attendees were giving him cold stares. Looking down at my husband, I said coldly, Do you understand? This is the result of what you've been doing. You abandoned the care of your mother and were having an affair. You've learned a lot from this, haven't you? Wait, Sarah, I was wrong. So, you are not going to say something stupid like, help me, are you? Let me tell you, I will never forgive you. After tormenting your mother and ridiculing people, there's no one who's going to help you. Suffer in hell. In the midst of the attendees' cold stares, my husband collapsed onto the ground, pale-faced. After that, I divorced my husband. There was no reason for me to be with him now that my mother-in-law had passed away. I later heard that he had been fired from his job. His boss had been at the funeral, so it was a predictable outcome. I demanded alimony from my ex-husband for his mistress. Apparently, his mistress was furious about this and promptly dumped him. A few months later, my ex-husband was able to find a new job through Jackson's introduction, but that was also part of my mother-in-law's plan. My ex-husband was working at a company known to Jackson, and from his salary, he was paying me alimony. Thanks to this, the alimony is paid to me every month without fail. Meanwhile, I started living alone with the money my mother-in-law had left me. Jackson, who was worried about me, even introduced me to a full-time job. All of this was apparently in my mother-in-law's will. I can't thank my mother-in-law enough for everything she's done for me. I said a prayer in front of my mother-in-law's grave and thanked her in my heart. Thank you so much, mother-in-law. I swore to myself that I would cherish this life I was given thanks to my mother-in-law. Our grandson is on his way home, so let's indulge in steak once more, right this moment. Quick, let's get the catering sorted at my in-laws. We treat ourselves to steak through catering once a month, a delightful tradition. Yet again, I find myself left out. How many times has this happened now? Every time we order, my mother-in-law conveniently overlooks my steak, leaving me empty-handed. She's quite assertive, and I just can't seem to stand up to her. I suppose I'll have to endure it once more. Just when I was about to resign myself to the situation, Grandma's actions feel particularly unkind. My name is Raina, a 38-year-old housewife without any remarkable talents. I resorted to a matchmaking service to find my current husband, Craig. Marriage seemed elusive until I met Craig, who shared my passion for movies. Our bond blossomed over movie dates, leading to a smooth courtship and marriage. Initially kind, Craig's demeanor changed after our son was born. Two significant changes altered the course of our lives. Firstly, our son's intelligence soared, excelling academically far beyond his age. Despite his brilliance, he faced bullying at school and eventually stopped attending. Encouraged by a teacher, he now studies at Cambridge University in England. The second change was moving into my in-laws' house due to my husband's work relocation. Living with my in-laws was a stark transition. My father-in-law's illness confined him to the hospital, leaving only my mother-in-law at home. As a former working woman turned housewife, adapting to this new life proved challenging, setting the stage for further difficulties ahead. Feeling under the weather, I was greeted on my first day in my husband's family home with a directive. "Work hard for me, young one," my mother-in-law said. Yet she appeared far from unwell, exuding more energy than me. "How old are you, mother-in-law?" I inquired tentatively. 64 this year, my husband replied, his tone tinged with annoyance. Despite her apparent vigor, in this household, her word was law. My husband's warning left me feeling isolated. It was evident my mother-in-law harbored hostility towards me, but I hadn't anticipated my husband's detachment. Even though our marriage had cooled, his abandonment stung. "Let's get to work," my mother-in-law commanded, thrusting an old mop and bucket into my hands. Surveying the dusty corners, I yearned to wield the vacuum cleaner. However, she insisted I tackle it all with the mop, rejecting modern conveniences. "Can I use the vacuum cleaner?" I ventured, hoping to address the dust efficiently. "No, stick to the mop," she curtly replied. Reluctantly, I agreed, concealing my frustration. As I began cleaning, I proposed we work together, but my mother-in-law intervened, asserting that my husband and she would rest while I toiled alone. Daunted by the size of the house, I realized the task was insurmountable solo. To compound matters, my mother-in-law added the chore of dishwashing to my already overflowing plate. Overwhelmed, I struggled to keep pace with her demands, feeling the weight of my new responsibilities bearing down on me. "I can't handle it all. The house is too big," I confessed, overwhelmed. In response, my mother-in-law offered a solution. "I'll permit you to use the vacuum for $10 every 10 minutes. How's that?" But the cost was steep, far beyond my means. Her disdain for my financial situation stung, branding me a poor daughter-in-law. My husband, silent and unhelpful, stood by as I endured her belittlement. He even criticized my mopping technique, insisting it was improper to converse while cleaning. The solitude we shared before moving in with his parents had transformed into a form of psychological abuse. Amidst the tension, my mother-in-law announced plans for steak, summoning catering. Though exhausted from cleaning and dishwashing, the promise of steak fueled my determination. I had invested extra effort into preparing for this moment, eagerly anticipating the reward. As the catered steak arrived, my excitement peaked, but my joy was short-lived. Despite my efforts, my mother-in-law declared there was no steak for me, leaving me crestfallen. The disappointment cut deep, shattering my anticipation and leaving me deflated. "I've cleaned the floors and done the dishes," I informed my mother-in-law, only to be met with dismissal. "That's only natural," she replied. "Consider it a token of appreciation for letting you stay. Think of it as paying a fee through your actions. Did you think you could live here for free?" Her words pierced through me, amplifying the sense of hellishness that had engulfed my life since moving into my in-laws' house to do my husband's work. Financially constrained and unable to afford living independently, I relied on a meager monthly allowance of $200 since getting married. After covering essentials and previous expenses, there was nothing left to save. The naive expectation of security as a housewife shattered in the face of harsh reality. As for dinner, my mother-in-law's unpreparedness spoke volumes. While they indulged in high-quality steaks, I was offered noodles. The stark contrast highlighted my subordinate status in the family. Even the act of washing the knife and fork after their meal was the closest I came to the steak. From the very first day, mistreatment became routine, leaving me mentally and physically drained. Amidst this despair, a rare call from our son studying abroad brought a glimmer of warmth. Praising my embroidery, he reminded me of my skills. His words, a balm to my soul, stirred emotions long buried under layers of neglect. But even in my moment of happiness, his keen perception sensed my trembling voice. A testament to his high IQ and psychological acumen, his concern mirrored the distance between us. Yet in his distant words, I found solace, a reminder that amidst the darkness, there remained a flicker of light. I couldn't believe how much my son had changed. He seemed to have an uncanny ability to see through my facade, sensing something was amiss with Dad. After a moment of silence, I summoned the courage to confide in him about the situation at my in-laws' house. Despite feeling ashamed for airing my troubles, having someone to confide in felt like a lifeline. "It's tough every day," I admitted, but he reassured me. "I'll come over once it's our vacation, and I've saved up some money from my part-time job," he promised, refusing to take no for an answer. With my son's imminent return home, time seemed to fly during our overdue phone call. An hour passed, leaving me feeling rejuvenated by his unwavering support. However, as soon as the call ended, my mother-in-law approached with a sharp glare. "That's quite a luxurious long phone call," she remarked, draining the energy I had gained from our conversation. Despite my apologies, she swiftly shifted the conversation to the upcoming block party, assigning me the task of shopping and making a reservation for steak catering. The day of the block party arrived, and guests began to gather. My mother-in-law, dubbed the president by everyone, was the center of attention. Amidst the festivities, she wasted no time in ordering me around, using me as her servant regardless of who was present. Some guests spoke up in my defense, urging my mother-in-law to treat me more kindly, but her threats silenced them, reminding them of their place in the community. Their initial support quickly waned under her influence, leaving me feeling even more isolated. It became evident that my mother-in-law's control extended beyond our house, permeating the entire area. Against her power, I felt powerless, a mere housewife unable to challenge her authority. The ordered steak arrived, and my mother-in-law joyfully arranged it on the table. Her choice was surprisingly lavish, accompanied by an array of high-end side dishes like caviar and truffles. Yet even amidst the opulence, she couldn't resist lecturing me. "Do you really think you deserve such fine steak as a wife? You're 100 years too early for that," she chided, her words a public humiliation. The sympathetic glances from those around us only deepened my sense of isolation. No one dared oppose her, not even my husband, who quietly savored his steak. Hope flickered within me, hoping for even a small portion of the steak. But my mother-in-law's words dashed those hopes, offering beef noodles instead. Upgraded from the ordinary, but still far from what I craved. Frustration simmered beneath the surface until it boiled over, and I couldn't contain it any longer. "Mother-in-law, this is too much," I exclaimed, my voice breaking the tension. "I've prepared everything for today's block party, and yet you treat me like this." Her response was swift and harsh, shutting down any semblance of rebellion. "Is this true, Reina? Couldn't you show a little kindness?" My husband interjected, hoping to defuse the situation, but his words fell on deaf ears as my mother-in-law's resolve remained unshaken. Silenced by her intimidation, no one dared challenge her authority. In that moment, it became painfully clear that in this household, her word was law, leaving me to navigate a world where my desires and efforts were constantly undermined. "Remember, you must obey mother in this house," my husband's sudden, authoritative voice echoed through the room, causing my body to instinctively flinch. The once lively atmosphere fell silent, and even those who had supported me began to echo his sentiment, filling the room with resounding agreement. Frustrated and overwhelmed, I fled from the scene, seeking solace in the sanctuary of my bedroom. Time seemed to blur as I locked myself away, the weight of the situation bearing down on me until exhaustion claimed me. When I awoke, the block party had dispersed and the night had fallen. Glancing at my phone, I found an email from my son, announcing his imminent arrival. Despite the exhaustion, I drifted back to sleep, awaiting his return. The next morning, I found my mother-in-law in the kitchen preparing breakfast. Without preamble, she remarked on my behavior from the previous day, her words cutting through the air. Informed of my son's impending visit, she immediately pivoted to plans for steak, eager for his return. As evening descended, my son finally arrived home, greeted by a table laden with lavish steaks. Despite his usual enjoyment of the meal, he couldn't help but notice my absence from the feast. Concerned, he questioned my mother-in-law, only to be met with a dismissive response. "It's fine, Reina is always like this," she waved off his concern, redirecting his attention to the meal before him. Despite her apparent happiness at being reunited with her grandson, my son's response was unexpected, his words laden with a depth of emotion I hadn't anticipated. "I don't want it. Why didn't you prepare Mom's portion? This is discrimination, isn't it?" My son's cool demeanor caught both my mother and husband off guard, their surprise evident in their expressions. My mother-in-law, taken aback by his unexpected assertiveness, began to panic, denying any wrongdoing. "What did you hear?" "I didn't do anything," she stammered, but my son remained steadfast, unmasking her behavior with unwavering confidence. "You're always looking down on Mom, aren't you? People like that usually lack confidence or have nothing to be proud of, so they attack others to feel superior. It's a mean personality," he countered, his words piercing through her defenses. As my son continued to confront her, my mother-in-law found herself increasingly cornered, her usual tactics rendered ineffective against his insight. "That's true, isn't it? Everyone has an equal share of steak, but Mom has nothing." "This is clear discrimination," he asserted, his logic irrefutable. Normally, such confrontation would escalate into a fight, but my son's demeanor remained composed, far beyond his years. With each observation, my mother-in-law grew more subdued, her usual confidence waning in the face of his scrutiny. "You're panicking. Your eye movements, habits, and amount of sweat tell the story," my son continued, revealing his studies in psychology at Cambridge University and his keen observation skills. Despite her attempts to maintain composure, my mother-in-law couldn't conceal her discomfort, her facade crumbling under his scrutiny. Watching the exchange unfold, I marveled at my son's poise, while my husband observed in silence. As the tension lingered, my son's final words hung in the air, leaving us all to ponder the implications of his observations. The tension in the room was palpable as my son fearlessly confronted my mother-in-law. "Grandma, do you have any talents?" he asked, his tone cutting through the silence. My mother-in-law, usually quick with a retort, found herself at a loss for words as my son continued, unrelenting. "What you did, Grandma, was unfair. Mom excels in embroidery. Her work could even sell in England," my son praised, surprising me with his acknowledgement of my hobby. "You, Grandma, have none, yet you try to belittle Mom and assert dominance. Is it because you can't accept someone being superior?" As my son's words struck home, my mother-in-law remained speechless, unable to refute his observations. "And what about you, Dad? Why didn't you stand up for Mom when she needed help? Were you unable to stand up to Grandma because she's your mother? If so, why did you marry her?" My husband, caught off guard by our son's probing questions, could only offer silence in response. My son's relentless critique didn't spare anyone, exposing the underlying dynamics of our family dynamic. "You both just want to feel superior and look down on others," he concluded, leaving my husband and mother-in-law speechless. I couldn't help but feel proud of my son's maturity and insight. His suggestion to move to England together took me by surprise, but his reasoning soon became clear. "One of my classmates has a father who's a Hollywood actor. He saw pictures of your embroidery and wants to buy your work. There's a waiting list of over 200 people eager to purchase your pieces, he revealed, his smile contagious. Overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events, I couldn't help but feel grateful for my son's unwavering support and encouragement. With his guidance, perhaps a new chapter awaited us, one where our talents were celebrated, not diminished. As my son shared his unexpected news, both my mother-in-law and husband listened with astonished expressions. "Mom, I've taken the liberty of arranging something for you. They want you to open a store with your handmade crafts in the UK," my son explained, his eyes shining with excitement. The thought of turning my hobby into a job, especially in England, left me speechless. While my mother-in-law and husband expressed their disbelief, I found myself considering the possibility. If I was going to face harassment at my in-laws' house anyway, why not pursue my passion as a profession? Moreover, the strained relationship with my husband made staying there unbearable. So, I made up my mind. I'll give it a try, I accepted, much to the shock of my family. And then, I dropped a bombshell. "I'm divorcing you. I'm tired of being oppressed by your mother. Let me be free." With that, my husband reluctantly agreed, and my mother-in-law ranted until the end, but I paid her no mind. The divorce was finalized without fuss, and I was finally free from the confines of my in-laws' house. Now, in England, I'm busy preparing to open a shop, insisting on crafting all the products by hand. Despite the initial fear of moving abroad, my son's wholehearted support makes the journey less daunting. Meanwhile, back home, I heard from my son that my former mother-in-law stumbled and ended up in the hospital. With her incapacitated, my ex-husband struggles to manage alone, taking on extra work to cover expenses. While it's a challenging time for them, I hope they find their way forward. As for me, I'm focused on the future, working on the final pieces for the shop's opening. With my son by my side, I feel confident in facing whatever challenges lie ahead. From rescuer to the rescued, our roles have shifted, but as a mother, I'll always support my son, just as he supported me. As my niece and I settled in for a night of house sitting at my elder brother's place while he and his wife were away, a curious moment unfolded. Amid our lively discussions about our plans for the following day, my niece surprised me by indicating she was ready for bed. With swift determination, she slipped into the closet without hesitation, leaving me momentarily stunned. Hastily reaching out to stop her, I was met with a puzzled look. I'm Melissa, a 24-year-old housewife, and my brother, 5 years my senior, has always been a steadfast presence since we lost our parents early in life. Our bond remained strong even after we both married, and we continue to lean on each other for support. While my in-laws are wonderful, they reside in Alaska, making it challenging to rely on them for immediate assistance. As for my brother Sam and his wife, their union was hastily arranged after a clash with her parents, leading to an ongoing estrangement. With no nearby relatives to lean on, our bond of unwavering support flourished. It grew even stronger when Sam and his wife welcomed their daughter, closely followed by the arrival of a little girl into my own family 4 years later. Living in the same city, the daughters became inseparable, akin to true sisters. As the years passed and my niece Sarah approached her 10th birthday, Sam shared his plans for a special 10th wedding anniversary trip. "Melissa, would you mind looking after Sarah while we're away?" Sam's request came with a touch of hesitation. "It's just a short overnight trip nearby, but we thought it'd be nice to have some time alone." I readily agreed, eager to assist. When we discussed logistics and I inquired about picking up Sarah, Sam shook his head, indicating a different plan. It became clear he wanted me to stay over at their house with Sarah, concerned about leaving it unattended for security reasons. I playfully teased Sam about his excessive concern but eventually relented. Opting to spend the night alone, I left my daughter, who still harbors some sleepover jitters, in the care of my husband. On the day of their anniversary getaway, I headed to Sam's house. Holding Sarah's hand, we bid farewell to her parents. She seemed a tad apprehensive as she watched them depart, but our house-sitting escapade was about to commence. Initially, I had planned to bring my daughter along and have my husband retrieve her at bedtime. However, Sarah adamantly refused, so I abandoned the idea. While I know she enjoys my daughter's company, she remained firm in her decision without offering an explanation. Sensing her disappointment, I'd offered to treat her to a playdate at my house after breakfast the next day, sparking a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. Sarah typically tailors her play to include my daughter, so I brought along some slightly more intricate games and puzzles that adults could also enjoy. As I laid them out, I asked Sarah what she fancied playing. We whiled away the hours engaged in games and cooking dinner together, yet Sarah remained by my side, casting nervous glances around the room. Initially, I attributed her behavior to potential loneliness or lingering nerves from being away from her parents, but even after several hours, her demeanor didn't shift. Concerned, I gently probed if something troubled her, but no matter how many times I inquired, her response remained the same. No, it's nothing, without divulging further. Sarah's guarded behavior hinted at an unseen apprehension. It wasn't until bedtime approached that I grasped the gravity of her unease. Sarah slipped into her pajamas, a smile adorning her face as she swung open the closet door and declared her intention to turn in early, planning to head to my house in the morning. To my surprise, nestled within the closet was a bed, its presence catching me off guard. Attempting to make sense of the situation, I watched as Sarah swiftly settled onto the bed, bidding me goodnight while nudging the door close. My astonishment spilled out in a raised voice. "Wait, Sarah, are you planning to sleep in there?" Her response, delivered with a solemn expression, affirmed her decision. "Yes, but it's okay. I'll keep it slightly ajar. If anything happens, I'll wake up immediately." Concealing my bewilderment, I extended an invitation for Sarah to join me in my own bed. After some hesitation, she relented and joined me. She explained her desire to keep the bed in the closet as a hiding spot. Though perplexed by her reasoning, I reassured her it was perfectly acceptable. With a bright tone, I queried why she felt the need for a hiding spot. After extracting a promise from me not to chuckle, she leaned in and whispered, "The monster might come." At first, one might assume she was just an innocent child, but the tale she spun shattered any semblance of innocence. Sarah trembled, clinging tightly to my arm. "The monster is terrifying and cunning. It only shows up when Daddy's away. If it appears, Mommy has to fend it off, and I must stay hidden in the closet until she succeeds. Mommy always cries during the struggle. Once, I tried to assist her, but the monster's banging on the closet door scared me so much." I wrapped my arms around Sarah, feeling her tremble against me, and sighed deeply. Perhaps this monster was more than a bedtime tale. It felt too real. The revelation of my sister-in-law's affair, discovered in such an unexpected manner, left me adrift. If the supposed monster was indeed her lover, it wouldn't dare approach this house while she was absent. Yet Sarah firmly believed it targeted days when Daddy was away. As I observed Sarah's vigilance throughout the day, her proximity a shield against potential threats, my heart ached. Considering the gentle soul of my niece and my brother's unwavering trust in his wife, anger swelled within me towards my sister-in-law. But above all, I yearned to offer solace and reassurance to Sarah. I gently clasped Sarah's hand, offering her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Auntie's here today. You mentioned the monster is cunning, right? Well, it'll be caught off guard by a stranger like me and won't dare to come near the house. Besides, your mommy, who the monster always targets, is safe with Daddy right now, so it can't harm her." Despite my attempts to ease her anxiety, Sarah remained clouded with worry, unaware of the monster's true identity. With each passing moment, her apprehension grew, fearing an imminent attack. She suggested we seek refuge together in the closet, prompting me to encourage her to share her concerns about the monster. I hoped that by addressing her fears one by one, she would eventually find peace and drift off to sleep. As I listened to Sarah's distressing revelations, I realized I couldn't simply remain idle. Without hesitating, I whisked her out of the house, disregarding her attire, and swiftly drove us home. Upon arrival, I briefed my husband on the situation and coordinated for him and his friends to spend the night at Sam's house. Around 10 p.m., after my husband and his companions had departed, I received a call from Sam inquiring about Sarah's well-being. "Has Sarah already retired for the night? Don't forget to take care of yourself and your family too. Ensure the house is securely locked. Good night," he advised before bidding farewell. After inquiring about Sarah, Sam urged me to ensure the door was securely locked before retiring for the night. His stern warning resonated deeply, and I fought to steady my voice as I assured him. Once the call ended, I glanced at the peaceful slumber of Sarah and my daughter, steeling myself to confront the lurking menace. The following morning, my husband returned from my brother's house, and my emotions swirled with a mixture of fear and anger as he recounted the events of the previous night. Relief washed over me, knowing my actions had been justified. We spent the remainder of the day at home, anxiously awaiting my brother and his wife's arrival to retrieve Sarah. Upon laying eyes on me, my brother's demeanor shifted to stern interrogation. He demanded to know why Sarah and I had departed his house during the night. "Why didn't you stay put as I instructed? I explicitly warned you not to leave. You claim to understand, so what possessed you to return home on your own?" His accusations left me feeling uneasy, prompting me to question how, while on a trip, he was aware of our absence. Avoiding direct eye contact, he reluctantly confessed, "We provided Sarah with a smartphone equipped with GPS." His revelation contradicted his earlier insistence on not leaving the house during our phone call the previous night. If he had indeed monitored the GPS, he would have easily discerned our departure. Suppressing my urge to confront Sam then and there, I maintained a composed demeanor, mindful not to disturb the children in the adjacent room. "By the way, did you have visitors last night?" My brother's tone shifted, his concern palpable. "Two unfamiliar men showed up at your house late. Who are they? Why would they come to a house that's meant to be occupied only by Sarah and you in the dead of night?" His voice quivered, though not from fear of the unknown intruders, but from a different source altogether. As he spoke, it became evident he was treading cautiously, his eyes darting around. "About those men," I pressed for clarification, but my brother's attempts at evasion were interrupted by his wife, Kate. Whether she was anxious about further discussion or for other reasons, she abruptly called for Sarah and declared they were heading home. As Sarah emerged from another room upon hearing her mother's call, Kate seized her hand with an unmistakable force. Abruptly, Sam's demeanor shifted, his words carrying an abrupt finality. "I can't forgive what happened, but we're leaving today," he declared, urging Sarah to depart the room. Despite my efforts to dissuade them, my brother and his wife remained resolute in their decision to leave. Ignoring my pleas, they pressed on without a backward glance. Witnessing Sarah's resistance to her parents' departure, I swiftly drew her close. "What's going on?" Kate's startled cry echoed as she released Sarah's hand, but I shielded the child behind me, creating a barrier between us and the departing couple. Amidst their hostile tirade, my husband and I stood firm, adamantly refusing to surrender Sarah. As they advanced toward us with fury in their eyes, we managed to usher them out of the room, firmly asserting our stance against allowing Sarah to be taken away. Swiftly, a waiting police officer intervened, promptly detaining the agitated couple. Confusion reigned as the officers attempted to contact my brother and his wife. Sam vehemently insisted to the officer that it was we who should be detained, alleging that we had taken Sarah from her home and were holding her against her will. "My sister and her husband have abducted her from her rightful place. Please rescue her swiftly," he implored, despite our protests. Our daughter, emerging from the chaos, sought refuge behind me, engaging Sarah in a bewildered conversation, affirming she was not being held against her will. Sam's stern demand for Sarah to accompany him fell on deaf ears as she clung to my side, paralyzed by her father's towering anger. Kate remained silent beside the officer, casting furtive glances at Sam, hinting at an unspoken message intended for him and Sarah. As the officer restrained Sam, who was causing a scene at the entrance, my husband intervened, holding his smartphone aloft. Sensing the tension, I ushered Sarah and our daughter back into the adjacent room, urging them to close the door to muffle any sounds. With their safety ensured, my husband silently played a video he had recorded in my brother's house the previous night. As the footage unfolded before their eyes, a ghostly pallor washed over the couple's faces, betraying the shock of realization. The video unfolded with eerie precision, capturing the quiet turning of the house key followed by the stealthy entrance of two unknown men, seemingly armed with a duplicate key. Their jovial demeanor upon entering, coupled with mentions of my brother's name, sent shivers down our spines. "You guys are ghosts too, huh?" they quipped, followed by a chilling joke about discounted rates, invoking my familial connection. With smirks etched across their faces, they directed their attention to my husband and his friends. Evading direct inquiries, my husband's friend offered a vague response, prompting one of the men to boast about the sum paid, hinting at a close relationship with my brother and his wife. Their unsettling remarks took a darker turn as they casually mentioned their plans involving Sarah. As the camera caught a glimpse of their profile, a sinister aura emanated, rendering them more villainous than any mere monster. From my vantage point, the screen remained obscured, but the chilling audio alone sent shivers down my spine. Following the playback, my husband's friends wasted no time interrogating the intruders, probing into their frequent visits and habitual pairings. Their inquiries soon turned to Sarah and me, a sense of urgency tainting their tone. My husband's terse admission of our absence seemed to jolt the intruders into reality, realizing the gravity of their situation. With mounting tension, the men made a hasty exit, their hurried departure leaving lingering questions in their wake. Whether they had overlooked my husband's recording until the last moment or deliberately concealed its existence remained unclear. My brother, appearing visibly shaken, vehemently protested his ignorance, clinging to the belief that he was being framed. However, the damning evidence presented in the video, entrusted to me and young Sarah by my brother, shattered any lingering doubts. His feigned ignorance failed to sway anyone, leading to his apprehension by the authorities. Kate, though feigning innocence, found herself under scrutiny as well, her involvement questioned by the officers who had heard Sarah's testimony. Consequently, both Sam and Kate were escorted into custody, their roles in the unfolding drama under intense scrutiny. During the police investigation, Sam and Kate eventually came clean, leading to their arrest. Shockingly, Kate had been orchestrating the lucrative scheme, inviting men to their home while Sam was away at work and profiting from their visits. When she realized there was a demand for children, she exploited Sarah, carefully skirting the law to assist her mother, who was under pressure from unsavory individuals. Innocent Sarah, unaware of the sinister motives, innocently posed for photos which Kate used to entice potential clients. These were innocent snapshots, devoid of any suggestive content, captured with a disposable camera and only lent out to interested parties, never sold. While I detested Kate for her actions initially, it seemed like a matter that didn't directly concern my husband and me. However, things took a darker turn when Sam not only condemned but actively participated in the exploitation, rather than reprimanding his wife or protecting their daughter. So, instead of addressing the issue, Sam decided to expand the operation, recruiting men to become clients, believing that more employees would lead to increased revenue. With this simple yet flawed logic, he devised a plan to involve me in his business. Knowing I would never willingly agree, he resorted to coercion, using the threat of exposing the photos as leverage. Their scheme took a sinister turn when they carefully selected a day when the neighbors were absent, locking both Sarah and me inside their house. Then, without a second thought, they exchanged their house key for a large sum of money and departed on a pre-planned vacation, leaving us behind. Unbeknownst to them, Sarah, who had always dutifully obeyed their commands, chose to reveal the truth in order to protect me. Despite her limited understanding of the conversations, Sarah sensed the danger lurking around us, and she confided in me, unveiling the nightmarish reality of Sam's household. Faced with this revelation, I implored my husband to capture the perpetrator's activities on camera that very night. Their inadvertent disclosure provided crucial evidence for the police, prompting swift action upon my report. Simultaneously, I notified Child Welfare Services to ensure Sarah's safety. From the vantage point of the police bus, we watched as Sam and Kate were apprehended at their doorstep, finally shielding Sarah from their grasp. Despite being first-time offenders, the severity of their crimes, including violations of child welfare and anti-prostitution laws, warranted their imprisonment. The police emphasized the gravity of the situation, particularly the implications of the stored images of the child, which could never be completely eradicated once leaked online. The chilling reality of their actions struck me to the core as the police relayed this information. Fortunately, Kate hadn't digitized or sold the photos of Sarah and had kept them securely stored, averting any potential leaks. It's baffling to comprehend how my once kind and dependable brother Sam could devolve into such a monstrous figure. Until then, our relationship had been characterized by mutual support, making it all the more frightening to realize how deeply he had descended into darkness. Despite their arrest, I still grapple with the enormity of their actions. Following Sam and Kate's apprehension, the authorities also interrogated the other individuals involved. Initially, they attempted to claim innocence, arguing that it was merely an attempted crime. However, the discovery of a child's photograph in their possession and the revelation of additional criminal activities confessed by Sam and Kate during the investigation led to their arrest on multiple charges. After dealing with the monsters and their associates, our next concern was Sarah's well-being. With both her parents unfit for guardianship and no family willing to step in, Child Protective Services decided to remove her from their care. While this was a relief, Sam and I faced the harsh reality that neither of us had parental figures, and Kate's family had severed ties. We discovered that if we couldn't find a suitable guardian within Kate's family, Sarah would be placed in foster care. After much deliberation with my husband, we made the decision to adopt her. Sarah held a special place in my heart, and I couldn't bear the thought of parting ways with her. Thankfully, my husband shared my sentiment, and we saw this as an opportunity to start anew in the countryside, closer to my in-laws. Moving to the countryside not only provided Sarah with stability but also allowed my daughter to spend more time with her grandparents, whom she adored. She was thrilled to have Sarah as her older sister, fulfilling her long-standing wish. Free from the clutches of her parents, Sarah quickly adapted to her new role and environment, embracing a life filled with peace and happiness.